So my wife works for a church, and I am noticing the cycle of a church employee, like the life cycle of a church employee. You start here. Wait, which way? You start here, which is probably younger, a lot of drive and a lot of ambition, a lot of real noble desire. And then over time, you get older, and through some combination of age and just continual beating down by the bottomless pit of need that is human ministry, your capacity for how much you can handle gets less and less. And so you become worse at your job. Not necessarily because you don't care, but because I think there's a numbness that sets in, and you give it all you have, and what you have is just not that much anymore, and you almost forget how to care well. And part of this problem is that churches have guaranteed incomes. Unless the senior pastor does something, I can see myself. Unless the senior pastor does something truly catastrophic, you don't have to justify your own salary in a church the way you do at a normal business. And so I think that's part of it too. So my wife is at the beginning right now. Her mindset is, if there is a hole or somebody drops the ball, I'll pick it up. Everyone else is, I think, further along in their journey, where they were there and they got so used to picking up balls that they had so many balls to carry that they just got numb to all of it, I think. And it's really interesting because I see this happening as a somewhat outsider. I feel like I can plot this life cycle. And I wonder, do people know it and just are unable to stop it? Because if you work in ministry, it's because you care about people. It was somebody's idea to do this because they did a flower thing for Mother's Day. Like, we got to do something for dads too, so we'll give them some dad's root beer. And then the person who had the idea was one of the pastors, and it got passed off to somebody. And he was like, I don't want the director of men's ministry to do it. I don't think he'll be able to do it, which is its own issue. So it got passed off to my wife, who did the first part of it, the ordering and logistics part. And then the idea was that this other dude would handle the actual coordination of volunteers to hand out the bottles on Sunday morning. And so the main dude passed it off to my wife, and then he passed the last 10% off of it off to another dude, who passed it off to another dude who didn't do it, which means that my wife's getting text today like, what are we supposed to do for this? And there's the gross incompetence evident at every level is staggering to me. As an outsider, I talk to my wife about it, and I say, listen, you can't be the training wheels for everything in the church. You have to let the bike fall a couple times in order for them to learn that things need to change. Because as long as somebody is there saying, I'll pick up the ball, I'll hold it, then no one else is going to have to. And the problem will continue to repeat itself and will, I think, kind of Ouroboros. It'll be a self-sustaining issue. Because the beauty of being good at your job is that you get to do other people's jobs too. That's the beauty of caring. And I was talking to my wife, and she said, yeah, but is this really the time to let the ball drop and let the thing be bad? And as an outsider who clearly doesn't care for people the same way she does, I said, yes, it is. This is the time, because this is a low stakes thing. I'm pretty sure most dads are not even going to care about getting a bottle of root beer. I don't. So I said, yes, this is the time. It's not gonna actually happen. Nothing's gonna change. It's the paradox of caring. It is, boy, whenever I film from below, I just am so fat. it's the entrepreneurial mindset running into the ministry mindset. And I think in general, they're just so opposite. And so I see it from I see this as a let something burn, like a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. And also, I don't care about these employees, and if you're incompetent, even though you work for a church, you should be put on a performance improvement plan and maybe let go. And I don't think there's a reason why I am not in church ministry. I'm editing this right now just on iMovie, and I wanted to speak a little bit more on this. Churches are no different from other businesses in that culture trickles down from the top. And I think in a way, churches filter out anybody who is super driven and super ambitious. Because if you are a super driven, ambitious person and you get to the top of a church and you bring that attitude with you, there's going to be some scandal or something that comes out of it because people are saying like, oh, he drives his employees too hard or things like that. So I think the people who tend to be at the top of long-standing churches are older dudes, older white dudes in my experience, who like are kind of like they do their thing and things just kind of are how they are, and they don't want to rock the boat a little bit because ironically you're young and you have all these ideas and changes that you want to make. And by the time you are old enough and respected enough to actually make them, you don't want to anymore because now you're old and a little less ambitious, and it's kind of been sucked out of you by life. There is like nobody becomes super successful without being psychotic. Like Jeff Bezos or Mr. Beast or anybody who's operating at an extremely high level, they all have allegations of, even Sam Walton too. People would say like working for Sam Walton is like getting chewed up and spit out in a couple of years because he drives you so hard. And like you've heard allegations about Mr. Beast too, and I don't know, I would assume Jeff Bezos, but I don't really know. But the point is, those sorts of people who are super driven and determined don't get to positions of high leadership in churches. And if they do, I think they get, there are scandals and they get weeded out. Which means that the people who get to senior leadership in churches are a little more weenie. Or at least they come across as weenie to me, somebody in the business world. And that leads to the weeniness trickling down. People will say, oh, you're high on the agreeableness chart. And I'm sure this is some Disker Meyer-Briggs thing that everyone knows but me. My coworkers keep saying it. And I hate that. And I don't know why. But so when I record stuff like what I just recorded, I tend to want to just delete it afterwards at the risk of stirring the pot. But I don't want to be afraid to stir the pot.